How you doing?
I am fine, I'm fine. And you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's nice that finally, after all these years, to speak to somebody in my own time zone.
Yeah?
It's such a bonus. I'm so
Oh, but
used to speaking to people 8 hours ahead, 8 hours behind, five, six, all the rest of it. And to get somebody in
yeah,
Portugal, on the same line is just wonderful.
yeah, it's wonderful. But you do some interviews on your own country or not?
I do some, but generally speaking, they're few and far between for some reason. Everybody seems to be out, or perhaps that's just my own interest. What part of Portugal are you in?
Now I'm in the south, almost in the
Okay,
south. So Portugal, it's a little country,
yeah,
maybe smaller than Great Britain, if you say about that Scotland and Great Britain, Ireland. So Portugal, it's smaller, I think. But I
okay.
mean Alentejo, and it's
Alentejo,
in the south.
okay,
Alentejo, yes. It's a very plain
mm,
sight.
yeah, yeah. I've heard about it. I've spent quite a few years coming back and forth to Portugal, different places. I've been around the country, but never to Alentejo.
Oh, you've been here. Oh, at
Yeah,
Algarve
quite a
province,
few
actually.
times. Yeah, quite a few times. And over this, not for actually maybe not for around about 12 years now, but in
Mm.
the nine noughties up until I suppose 2010 or 11, I came quite a lot. And everybody always joked about Alentejo. It's like it's really flat and hot. Everybody has big sombreros, and a joke, but because of the weather, it's almost like a Mexican feel to it. It's slower, it's easier, it's more of a
Yeah,
um
it's very
countryside
hot here.
feel. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very hot. The temperature varies a lot during the day, so you can
Uh-huh.
have like, do you have Celsius in England,
Celsius, yeah.
degrees,
Yeah,
Celsius?
Celsius.
So we have
Yeah.
like 10 degrees during the night or 9 degrees, and during the day 30. So
Okay.
it's a huge variation. So
That's
today there were 31 degrees. You could
oh really?
already be at the beach or at the lake, yeah, enjoying the summer almost.
Rui, I'm there. I'm already there. I'm on the plane. I'm on the plane. But I used to go to like a lot of British people. I used to travel to Algarve.
Hmm.
But after the first year I visited, I was staying in a little tiny town near a bigger town called Tavira. Still
Severe,
not a big
near
town,
the
Tavira.
coast. Yeah.
Yeah, near the coast. And so I was staying in a place called Luz de Tavira, which was
Hmm.
about 16 kilometers away or something like that. I had a
Mm.
bike and I was cycling every day on the double on the A road part of that main motorway, the really dangerous motorway. What's that called again? The,
Uh, I really don't know.
I
In
don't know.
Tavira,
Anyway,
yeah.
treacherous.
There's a very dangerous road, but it's not a motorway. Motorways, you generally,
Yeah.
it's like national 125. It's very known in Portugal to have many accidents, but it's
Well,
a national road
yeah.
normally.
This is the thing. I know.
With
Well,
that
it was
one
a road.
already.
It was two lanes. It was two lanes with a dirt track and a drainage channel
Okay.
on either side. And one of the days when I was cycling, I experienced for the first time this Portuguese um, driving thing that I never heard about before, which is when somebody wants to overtake, they overtake into the oncoming traffic, and the traffic in front of them, this is an Algarve anyway, moves to the side and lets them through
Uh, that
on
not
a country
That's not
road.
very common now, I think, but yeah,
Hmm.
some people
This
can do
is
that.
2000, the year 2000, in fact. It was before beginning of the noughties, and I'm on my bike, I'm cycling away.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I see this car pull out in front of another car, come towards us, and I see cars beside me. And I'm thinking, what's going on? They start moving into me. I had to ditch the bike. I'm in the ditch. The wheels are spinning. The
Whoa.
cars zoo zoo zoo. Everybody goes. Nobody stops
So you don't
to
have
check if I'm okay.
so many good
And I thought,
memories from Portugal, at least the
no,
road.
well, that was just the first time. I have
They're
great
like
memories.
savages
Hmm.
driving
No,
here. Yeah.
it's a wonderful place. I love it. I still have Portuguese friends from that time. When I
Yeah.
came back years afterwards, we kept in touch. It's wonderful. I love the food. I love the bifana. I love the bacalhau, mejouage, all the wonderful things.
Yeah,
Conquilhos, all that
all the fish near
seafood,
the
all
coast.
the
You
fish,
eat a lot of fish. Yeah.
and of course, the awesome coffee, the galao, which is like a cappuccino that tastes good, which I. That's a
What,
nice thing.
I didn't understand what you said.
I think they call this coffee a galão. Galão?
Oh, the coffee galão,
Yeah.
yes. You put
Yeah.
like half milk, half coffee.
Yeah, like an
You
upside
drink it
down,
on a cup.
like a big glass. Exactly.
Could be
Yeah.
glass, yes.
Yeah, yeah, really nice. Anyway, it's a country I like very much. But similarly to many people who ask me about Wildman reports in Britain, I
Mm.
would not expect that there should be Wildman reports in Portugal, which is
Portugal.
why, and Spain, which is why I thought I'd get in touch with you and see what you know, what's happening
Yeah.
there.
So 1.5 years ago, I didn't expect any report from Portugal also.
Mm,
I always loved the subject. I always studied the subject mainly online in United States, Canada, and I always thought, well, one day I'm going to British Columbia and
mm,
try to find Sasquatch to study Sasquatch. But I never thought that in Portugal it could be the thing. So um, I I started to investigate mainly in the web in the beginning about reports in Europe, since I knew about the Almas and the Almasti
mm,
in the Asian part. So there's not a land wall separating
mm,
both the land masses, so they could come to Europe. So I thought maybe in Europe there are some reports. I knew about the ancient reports, the Wildman and the Wodewose
mm,
in Great Britain, and I started looking for reports, and I found the reports in Spain about Basa-Juan
yeah.
and in the Pyrenees. So it got me very interested, and I thought one day I must go there, and I
Mm,
started believing that they could be there because the Pyrenees is a very continuous mountain. It's like
mm,
300 kilometers to one point to the other, to connecting the Atlantic to the Mediterranean,
mm,
to the south. And it's very wide, full of woods, with lots of wildlife, red deer.
bears, I think.
There are bears
Mm,
also, not many, but there are some.
mm,
Wolves. I mean, it's an amazing
mm,
place to visit. I think it's probably wilder than the Alps, because the Alps,
yeah.
I think it's bigger, but they are more urban. There are more countries
Oh,
like Switzerland,
mm,
lots of villages, lots of cities inside the valleys.
okay.
So in the Alps you don't have that kind of wilderness that you have
Mm,
on the Pyrenees. And 1.5 years ago, I went to France with my family, just enjoying some vacations, and I thought, well, I'm going to stop at the Pyrenees and see what I'm finding, because I also saw the report that I talked in my video about the Peña Montañesa. It's a place near the valley of Bielsa, where in the 90s some a group of people that were cutting wood, they
mm,
saw a bipedal monkey or
mm,
a hairy man doing some shrieks and doing some very loud noises and climbing to the trees. So I, I, I started by looking at that places, and at the beginning, and still in France, I must say, still in France, I visited some woods, and I noticed a structure first. But then I looked at the structure and I thought, oh, must be scouts.
mm,
must be it must be kids doing this. I was not into the subject. I was not already
sure.
convinced myself. So when I reached the Pyrenees, I started climbing. I was at the Pyrenees like during 1 week,
Mm,
hiking into the mountains, and I started noticing the same things that those guys in the United States noticed. So the broken trees pointing to
mm,
some 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 directions, and generally not one to the side, one to the other, just pointing to one side. Of course, it some people could say it could be a storm, but there
mm,
were no trees around that seemed to be affected by that kind of phenomena, breaking those trees. I saw some axes. I saw some very strange things
mm,
just near the hiking trail, you know, like saying, this is mine, this is yours.
Uh-huh.
And in some places I did find my first TP structures.
Oh.
They were big, and that's when everything started for me. I really started believing that those reports were real, that they were real, they were there, and I I had to investigate and to have some answers, because it's it's a really mind-boggling theme.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think once you get out there and you see things you can't explain, and of course, similarly with the structures, I've been critical of them in the past, but
Yeah,
really only from the point of people not investigating for signs of an animal around them, like footprints or indentations or hairs attached to them and things that could be caught up, I suppose, while they're being made. But I have seen some things in the
they
past that
could.
I thought to myself, I can't imagine how any person in the world out here in the middle of nowhere could have made this. And that's certainly
Yeah,
very, very strange.
when you start looking at them, you start seeing there are they have peculiar ways of being built. They
Mm,
how can I say it? You see that not it was not a human brain
mm,
to build that thing, because we do things the easiest way, the obvious way, and Sasquatch build those things completely the opposite. You can see that in some branches you have to have like 3 or 4 people um, picking the branches in a certain way for
mm.
for for another person to put another branch holding all those ones together. So
Oh,
it
okay.
would not
Yeah.
have it would have needed more than 3 or 4 persons to build such a structure in that way.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and I do wildlife surveys in my country. That's what I do for a living. I
Oh,
do
okay.
um, mainly in environmental impact assessments.
Okay.
So I work in the field survey. So now I am 2 weeks away from my home in the field, and in 20 years of work, I have never seen such a structure and such things in Portugal before.
Wow. I mean,
So
that's a really
that's
strong qualifier. You know what it looks like out there. Obviously then what scouting parties look like as well, how they build, which is, for me, that's a much better qualifier than I saw some structures in the forest. They look weird. You know
yeah.
what they should look like, what they shouldn't.
And
Have you noticed anything in these areas where you found these strange structures? Any differences in animal behavior or perhaps even lack of animals or animal noise or things like that?
no, I really haven't. The places um, where I've seen them, they are very different.
Mm,
In Portugal, um, I only found those kind of structures in one mountain in Portugal. Every every other place you don't see them. At least I haven't found them,
mm,
and I go around Portugal a lot every
mm,
year. So that's what made me think
mm.
that maybe in Britain, if you go into a park or into some woods, you can find structures, but not in Portugal. And we also have scouts, we also have kids.
Okay.
Why those kids would only do those structures in that place and not on the other places? So that's really strange.
Yeah.
Comparing UK, Portugal, Spain, and France, and the United States.
Yeah.
But regarding your question about animals, I haven't seen any difference. There are usually in those places there are a lot of game, like big
Okay.
game, like elk, red deer. We call it red deer in
Mm.
Portugal, in Europe, not elk.
I
Uh,
would call them red deer as well. Yeah.
Wild boar, roe deer, all of
Okay.
those big games. Yeah,
So they're close
have
to a
them.
food source, basically. There's a good food source there. That's
If
that's
they really
important.
use that kind of food source, yes,
Mm.
they have it. But the one place in Portugal that I have been finding those structures, they are not they don't have so many food sources, like in terms of game, in terms of meat. They would have to sustain themselves in other ways, because that area doesn't have any deer, only wild boars, and not many. But the structures are in some places around the mountain, not everywhere. Some particular places, they are consistent. Some of them are putting down, and one week after you have another one.
Wow.
Disappearing.
It's yeah, it's really strange. And to be honest, when I heard about it here in the UK, when I started writing my first book, I couldn't quite believe it. I thought, well, come on, where's the historical sort of background for this? Surely this is just a side effect of that Finding Bigfoot program that was popular in the noughties or the beginning of the tens. I mean, and surely we're just sort of cottoning onto that a little bit. But then I started looking into the historical background of things like the Wodewose here and hairy men depictions on cathedrals and on tapestries and noble heraldry. Is it the same situation in Portugal and Spain as well? Are they on the churches and the tapestries?
Yes, they are not so many in our monuments, but there are some figures, like you have like gargoyles, and right next to the gargoyle you have a Wildman type being. But in tapestries in Portugal, I haven't seen many things. My wife she's graduated in history. She has also graduated in archaeology, and she's also helping me to find those kind of ancient proofs, and there are not many. Like in the 16th century Europe, there was like something that was how can I say it? It was very common in the 16th century for people to write poems, to do some art around Wildman. There was something specific in Central Europe, not in Portugal. We didn't have that, but they are also here in our mythology. We have something that we call the caretos, and the caretos is like an ancient ritual that the historian people say that they are rituals of fecundity, of paganism.
Yes, yeah.
And all the people they use like some vests with collars and some masks, very similar to what you can find around Europe and in various countries. As you can see in Spain and in Basque country, people dressing themselves like Basa-Juans, or in the other parts of the Pyrenees, or in Switzerland. I think in Switzerland it's Krampus, and you can find it all over. You can find it all over Europe, and they are so similar to the hominid bipedal hairy man that it's mind-boggling, and it's difficult for you to just believe that they are fecundity rituals or whatever.
I mean, it's hard to dismiss. It's really hard to dismiss. Yeah, and some of the depictions I've seen here in the UK even have conical heads occasionally on some of these old cathedrals. Not many, but there's a few like that. At a time where we had no knowledge of those types of gorilla type apes. We didn't have a depiction of that conical headed ape, within the fauna that we were aware of. I wondered actually if there's some cultural reason for the lack of depictions in Portugal and Spain, southern Portugal and Spain. And could that be to do with the Moorish rule of those countries at a time when Europe, because it's the medieval period really when this legend starts to become really popular in Europe, and at that period, further back, the Moorish influence, especially in that of depictions, not depicting any figures because of the religion of Islam, could have affected those parts of southern Spain and Portugal. Do you think there's anything in that at all?
I really never thought about that, but I don't think so. I think it was more the church, because when Rome brought Christianity to the Iberian Peninsula, to Spain and Portugal, they started to destroy everything that was pagan, like deities, everything, and substitute them to the Christianity deities, to the saints. Even the megaliths, like the big dolmens with the big rocks, like you guys have in Stonehenge. We have some big megaliths in Portugal also, and also the megaliths were built like churches. So they put like walls, and they put a roof, the cross on the top, and today you can visit them, and they are churches or chapels in the middle of in the middle of nowhere, just trees, a plain field full of cows or sheep, and a chapel that was an ancient megalith. So they were very proficient, substituting all those pagan myths and rituals by those Christianity deities. And you can still see that when you go into the old villages and you ask to the old people about these kind of things, about werewolves and sorcery. People know a lot about that, and they still talk a lot about that. But it's everything. It's also always around the devil, something with horns. The werewolves have like they are like a mix between a goat and a hairy man and the head of a wolf. So they are very, very strange, and not like those dogman reports in the United States or in the UK or around Europe. And so whenever and that's what I think, whenever people see something, even if they see an hairy man with a conical shape, they will likely say that it was the devil, that they will come up and say to everyone that they saw a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. They don't even know what is a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, so they will say it's a devil. So that's my theory why in Portugal there are so few reports of bipedal hairy hominids. But at least I have found two reports in the mountains in the central of Portugal that you could say they are the bipedal hominid.
Could you tell us a little bit about those two reports, the descriptions that were given, and the situation as they happened?
One of them, it was given to my wife in first hand, because she, as an historian, she recollects all that knowledge and all that ancient knowledge and all those rites and those things around that theme. And there was an old lady that told her it was not easy for her to recollect that report, because first she told, oh, it was so ugly that I don't even want to tell you what I think it was, or something like that. But then she insisted, because she was living near that old lady, and then she told her that it was like a big giant full of hair, black, and she didn't saw quite well the face, so I can't really tell if it was, but she didn't tell it was a wolf, or I think she really saw it was like a human face. That's why she was so scared, that she was like a little girl, and she ran away. But it was many, many years ago, in the center of Portugal, in the mountains. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And there was another report as well. You said the second?
And the second report, it's very close to that one, because it's around the Serra da Estrela mountain. It's the Serra da Estrela. It's the highest peak in Portugal. It's not so high as some peaks in Spain. It reached 2,000 meters. And that first report is like 150 kilometers apart from the other report that I told you. And it was also an old lady that when she was like 5 years old, no, I think 10 years old, she saw when she was a shepherd when she was young, and she was with the goats in the mountain, and she saw two, what she described as two cavemen, because on that time I think people were not educated, and kids have already heard about cavemen, and that cavemen were full of hair. So that's what in her mind, I think she came up with a caveman. And she was saying that they were talking to each other, and she didn't understand nothing.
Wow.
And then she saw them entering a cave and disappeared.
Wow. It's amazing. I mean, that to me, and you talked about the stories of the the Almasti in the Caucasus and almost in Asia, and how really there's nothing to disrupt a migration from that part of the country. I personally don't think that they would have migrated from there, other than they just inhabited Europe and have slowly disappeared in certain areas, and perhaps are still a little bit more prevalent in those pristine areas.
That shrinked, to some certain places that they could still be, because there are caves, there are I don't know, probably caves. I think it's got to do with caves, because unless they are a very normal being with the capacity of being completely invisible, which I think they can. They also have. I think they have to have caves. I think they live underground also.
That would make sense. That would make sense. You mentioned this capacity for disappearing from sight. Do you think that's invisibility in some sort of supernatural sense, or do you think as a master of the forest? And people mention to me their blended fur colors a lot, the grays, the browns, the blacks, all mixed together as one. Within the leaf littered forest, something that's not moving could easily disappear from sight with that kind of coat. Do you think it's something like that, or are you talking about this thing can cloak, as people call it, all the time and disappear from sight completely?
I've been hearing those theories also. The more gigantopithecus is to more the animal and more the paranormal human type being. And although I have a scientific background, I cannot say to you, and I cannot believe that something completely normal, like an animal, could still live in those conditions, in the places they live. It's not possible. And maybe North America, maybe some places in Siberia, in Africa, in Amazon, in the Amazon, maybe there are places where they could be, and no one could find them, but not in my country, not in the country next door, that's Spain, not in Europe. I don't think so. They have to be to have some paranormal, we could say it's paranormal capabilities to go to cloak themselves, to do the various things that I also have experienced. And
I think it's interesting that in the Bigfoot genre, this subject comes up a lot. And what I find with a lot of researchers, myself included in some respect, is that there's something about our environments that their capacity to remain unseen brings us to the conclusion that they must be either supernatural in their being or in their ability. So this could be a natural animal. I often thought about, and I mentioned this a few times, the first person in history that dived beneath the waves and watched an octopus camouflage itself as a rock, not only in color but shape, must have thought that was supernatural. But we know it's not. We understand this this physical ability that it has. But to our ancient forebears, that's something that's
and
inexplicable.
this,
Could it be
and
something?
despite that octopus is able to do that, you still know that they are there. You still capture
That's true.
them. And I heard all of those people
Yeah.
saying about all the tigers and all those rare
Yeah.
animals. I mean, how many times did you see a tiger or a bear? But
Yeah.
they are still being seen. They are still being
But we know
captured,
they're there.
poached,
That's what you're
and
saying.
poached.
Yeah.
That's why they are rare.
Mm.
Even in Siberia, there are the Siberian tigers. They are
Yeah.
very rare,
Yeah.
but they are still being captured. So
Yeah.
why not the Bigfoot is being captured also? Even if he could cloak, it's completely impossible in my opinion.
Okay.
And I work with animals, with
As a
big
naturalist, yeah. So
as a
yeah.
naturalist, hobbyist since my early childhood. I love the team. I'm a keen bird watcher. I know all the birds in Europe. I've seen them all, and I think it's not possible. It's
Wow.
not possible.
So this is, I mean, this is a startling opinion, really, Rui, and quite a damning indictment for the flesh and blood Bigfoot, because you're a scientist, you're a naturalist,
Oh, they
you're
are flesh and blood. They are flesh and blood,
oh
but
really? You think?
they
Oh, but
have
with supernatural ability.
yes, completely.
Uh-huh.
We call it supernatural. Maybe in 500 years,
Yeah.
science could explain that, but now we call it supernatural. We don't know.
Okay.
We don't
Okay.
even know if they have some sophisticated gear that can do that for them.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Maybe they are more advanced. We really don't know. But I have been experiencing some very strange things
What kind of things?
during my research. Some mind speak.
Oh,
Me,
really?
me and my wife.
Uh-huh.
I have been having some images,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife Vera, she has heard voices and something communicating with her, and all the things that I have been recording, they mess with my camera. I have a new fancy GoPro 11 that sometimes it goes berserk. It
Oh,
goes like
really?
yeah, completely berserk.
But
And
outside of these areas where you think they inhabit, the camera works perfectly well.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So, and this is an
and
interesting thing. Could they have, somebody mentioned infrasound before, and I looked at this once or twice, this infrasound. There was a recording here that a researcher gave to me, and it was recorded after a strange incident in a place called Harwood Forest, which is in Northumberland. And he'd had a sighting there years ago, and him and his friend were researchers, avid researchers, not afraid to be in the forest, looking for the creature. And one night they'd set their infrasound recorder up in a tree, hidden it, and suddenly they both felt really, really uneasy, and they both said, "You know what? Let's just go back and sleep in the car tonight." And they left the forest and slept in the car park outside in the car. And the next day they came back, they got the infrasound recorder, they checked it a little later in the day or the week or whatever, and found, below at the infrasound level, this strange rumble, as in a sort of a low growl that would have been imperceptible to the ears. And I started to think, why would they leave this area? Were they pushed out with the effect, this infrasound? And could that also have an effect on electrical equipment in some way or some aspect of that ability? What do you think about that?
I think it can be both things. I think they could have like been mind speak to leave, and they
Hmm.
just accepted like a thought of their own. That they when the first time I have experienced mind speak, I didn't even think it was mind speak. I think it
Mm.
was me
Having a thought.
my own
Mm.
thoughts, But then I realized it was not. I'm going to tell you something that went with me and my wife in the Basque region in the Pyrenees.
Mm.
We went to check some structures that we have previously seen
This is in
before.
Iran.
Yes,
This
near
is in
Irun.
Iran, Navarre.
Yes, near Irun.
Yeah.
Yes. And uh, I was driving my car because I was leaving the area. I
Mm.
checked all the other things that I wanted to check. I checked all the structures to see if they if some branches were headed, or some structures were put into the ground, some new ones could come up. So when I was leaving, I was driving my car near a wood of beech trees. So there was not undercover, almost any undercover beneath the beech trees, and it was winter, so there was no leaves. You could see through the forest, and a small beech tree near the road started to shake without anything moving it. It was completely isolated from any other small tree. And when I was driving, I was seeing that thing shaking, and I waited like for 1-2 seconds. I did the curve with my car, and I said to my wife, that bush started to shake without anyone. It's no wind. There was no cow, no animal near the bush. It started to shake, and she told me. And I immediately, when I saw that, I immediately saw in my mind that small beech tree, and I saw like a figure of a hominid, very dark. I could not tell the face or the nose. I could only see the silhouette, and like they mind speak to me the image that was happening there. So they like told me that that tree was shaking because there was something near it that was shaking it. And a few seconds after, my wife told me, when I told her that, she stayed like very pale, and she told me, oh, a few minutes before, I asked them telepathically to show themselves, and why in this trip they were not showing themselves to me, why they were not speaking to me, because she has a lot more than I do about that mind speak. She has heard them speaking to her voices, like deep masculine voice. And when she told that, when she put that thought to them, like, why aren't you showing something to me? I told them, I start to see that bush shaking. It was just sequential, you know? And she got very pale after I told her that. It was very strange, very strange. It's like they were interacting with both of us, but differently. But in the end, everything came up together, you know? Very strange.
I mean, it's and for people out there listening, I imagine it's very hard to accept such a thing, because people always think we often manifest philosophically and personally that which we wish to see. So from a logical point of view, as a scientist as well, you probably appreciate how that might be hard for some people to accept. But I think, I've heard these types of stories so often that it's hard for me to really brush it off. It's hard for me to brush it off, because although nothing like that has ever happened to me, I've heard so many people that I trust out there in the field to say, yeah, I was there and something told me to get out, and then I went out and then I saw something on my way out. Or it wasn't a feeling. I was literally told to get out. And it reminds me of The Big Grey Man of Ben McDewey and Philip Moore, that most people who've experienced it on a mountain say they experience a feeling of dread and warning that they have to get off the mountain straight away. And some were even felt that they were told to throw themselves from the mountain in Scotland. And that's a strange thing, because they were all lucid people who said they would never do such a thing. And yet they were overcome suddenly. And the urge to jump off the mountain was overwhelming. I thought, wow, isn't that a strange thing? That's not how you expect a prompt to feel, that it almost takes away your control. So that's, I definitely think there's something in that. What do you think then about the different types of wild men around the world? Because you have Bigfoot in America and Sasquatch, if you will, and that seems to be, I know Dr. Jeff Meldrum talked about different types, this big man-ape type with that flat foot, And then the Wildman in Europe and Asia seems, or at least Central Asia, seems to be
Yes.
more human-like, at least in stature or in its the morphology of its feet, which have that little arch as well. Do you think there are different types, or do you think this is something more like, you've got a polar bear, a black bear, a grizzly bear. They're all bears, but they are different in some way, variable within the species.
That
What are
example
your
that you're
thoughts?
saying, they are still different species. So black bear, polar bear, still different
Mm,
species. So I don't know if there are different species of Bigfoot. Maybe there
mm,
are. Maybe there are different races. We all as humans are not equal to the
mm,
same. Someone taller, some with broad nose, some with aquiline
mm.
nose, some more darker, some more white, red hair, blonde hair. I really don't know. They can probably show some different characteristics around the world,
Mm,
and it could be also different species. Who knows? Who knows?
mm,
And where are they coming from? Because one thing that I think I notice, it's the more reports, more and more reports each year. I think they are becoming more seen and more available even in Europe. I've been
mm.
talking to a lady in Germany. All the woods around her are full of structures also, and things appearing from nowhere. So, and
Interesting.
why in those countries or UK you can see a lot of forests with those structures, and in Portugal you can only see them in one or two places. So
Mm,
it's a little bit strange. But when I analyze all those stories, um, the the karst, the karst, the cave systems in
yes.
calcareous
Mm,
mountains. So they form big karsts. They are excavated by the water,
mm.
and always in generally their presence are associated with those big caves.
Okay. Okay. That would make sense. I don't know if you have a similar situation in Portugal actually, but here we have a lot of abandoned mines, not just coal mines from the recent
Mm.
shutdowns in the 80s, but we have tin mines from hundreds of years ago that are still, you can still get into, the small, tiny openings, but they're completely untenanted. And most of the time, people, apart from the odd exploratory cavers, that's a fad here, thing that people are doing, people don't know that they're there. They exist in forests and, in hills and um, sparse places where people don't walk anymore. It's off the beaten track. So I think everywhere has room for something to live. You mentioned Portugal is small, but it's not small on foot. It's not small if you're walking, it's small if you're flying and taking the train or whatever. But for an animal to exist in that environment, there are untrodden paths, I think, that these animals could live outside of. Um,
Yeah,
talking about um, talking about evidence, you said that you saw a silhouette when the tree was being shaken there in Iran in Navarre. Is would you say that that was a sighting? Would you classify that as a sighting? Because people say seeing is believing,
I, I
but
really
could
don't know, because I think about that a lot, because
yeah.
and I question myself a lot about that image, because sometimes I think, no, it's my own imagination. But
Mm,
generally, when I imagine one thing, I can imagine further. So I can imagine the nose, the
okay.
nostrils, and I still today I cannot go further than that blurred image
Mm,
of a
silhouette.
bipedal figure and silhouette. It's very strange. It's like a block. I cannot tell you how the face is. I cannot imagine a face and that figure. It's
Mm.
very strange. So I really don't know if it's a sighting. I don't think so. I don't think it's a sighting.
I think it's
Um,
good that you're skeptical because to question yourself, it means you're still
yes,
on
yes,
top of the objective. You still have an
yeah,
objective line of sight.
yes. I must be. I must do that always, because it's a very thin lane. If you
Mm,
go on that woo stuff and you lose your own your own ground, you know. Then you start seeing faces and shapes in every foliage, in every photograph. I don't do that,
Yeah.
and I don't think that those are
The
Bigfoot.
road to pareidolia is one. It's a
Yeah, the
hard one to return
pareidolia.
from. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I've seen so many pictures like that. I did something very mean in the early days when I was public with Bigfoot, and I've become so fed up, I guess, with these book groups with a close-up blurry picture of some bushes and then a circle, and everybody's saying, "Well done," hundreds of comments, "Keep up the great work." And I posted something on my page, which was just, I literally walked to the forest beside the house, not a big forest, maybe a mile wide,
Mm.
clicked a picture and said, in this photo, put some red circles, two Bigfoot, a juvenile dogman, and a dogman mother,
Yeah.
and even put a smiley face next to it. And I got about 100 comments saying, "This is fantastic," and I can see them. And I think there's also a third dogman there. And I was like, "Come on, please.
Mm.
Like, I can't even mock you. You're making it hard. You're making it hard to
Yeah.
even, I feel bad. Whereas
Because it's
the
really easy
beginning,
to find some human faces on those
mm,
conditions. And if you have clouds, you also will going to find a Bigfoot on the clouds,
yeah, of
if you
course,
want.
of
But
course, of course. What
yeah,
about that? What about that aspect of things, though? What do you think about that? Because, of course, in a place like the Pyrenees, there's plenty of monster imposters as well. There are wolves, there are large deer, there's bears that
mhm.
are rare. And it's okay, mention this European brown bear. Is that the species
Yes,
that's
European
there?
brown bear.
Yeah.
Yes, European brown bear.
So, that's a large creature as well.
Yeah,
Seeing one of those standing up in a silhouette in the dark, partially obscured by trees, could also have quite a startling effect. Now, I don't believe that's what you saw because you know your
probably.
animals, but
Hmm.
how often do you think people, even people who live in the region who probably rarely see bears, could mistake one
Yeah,
for some sort of bipedal hominid?
I think people living in the region since they were a child, they would know those animals very easy. They are habituated to them. So I don't think they would those kind of mythology would
Mm,
come up around a silhouette of a bear in the night or in the fog. They have more into it. They have a lot of stories in the and in if you go into the Pyrenees, you
mm,
in the internet you only hear about the Basa-Juan because in the Basque
mm.
country, and it's in some blogs. But if you go into the Pyrenees, each valley has its own name for the creature, almost.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. Now that to me, and I did include the Basa-Juan in my recent book, and I was fascinated by it, even though there were only a few recent sightings, like when you mentioned a few others, the one at the church as well. I just, I just thought it was amazing to me. Some people pointed out the similarities with some of the Basque costumes in celebration of it to
mm-hmm.
the shepherding god Silvanus, the keeper of the
Sylvanus.
sheep. I always thought with the Wodewose, for example, with the club carrying Wodewose of Europe, that Heracles was a better fit from that perspective. The Hercules, the god Hercules, he was meant to be strong and hairy and have this big club that he defeated all of these enemies with. Do you think that those ancient forebears, like the pagan forebears, like the satyr, the faun, gods like Hercules and Sylvanus, could have been ways to explain the wild man as people saw it, or do you think
I
in the
think so.
reverse, they've led to these wild man legends?
I think so. They could have every legend, every myth has something with truth in the
Mm,
beginning. Even if
mm,
it's enlarged and it's not correct in the beginning, there's something into it. So I guess yes, the fauns, the satyrs, all the wild man stories have something to do with the wild man, with the homme sauvage in France, all of that. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Even the caretos in Portugal.
yeah. What is it called in Portugal, please?
Caretos, caretos.
Caretos. What does it mean literally?
It comes from cara, and cara
Yeah.
comes from mask, like a
Ah,
face.
okay.
In the south of Spain, you have the Nevada mountains, and they call them monos caretos. And monos,
Monos
it's
caretos.
monkey with
Oh, with a
face
mask.
with a mask, something like that. But monkey,
This.
it's the only place in the Iberian Peninsula in Spain that I know of them calling them monkeys.
Wow. Monos caretos. And just caretos in Portugal.
Yeah, because the language has a common
Yeah.
ancestry, so
Yeah.
some words are almost the same. Yes.
Yeah.
But in Portugal, only stayed the caretos. The caretos, yes.
Would caretos only mean mask then, or masked one, or mask face? What do you think it literally means?
I think it derives only from mask,
Mask, yeah.
from a mask, from a face,
Mm.
angry face or
Mm.
old face, something like that.
Okay. Like an
And even
ogreish kind of face.
ogreish kind of face. And even today,
Yeah.
they use those customs and they build like masks in wood. And sometimes
Okay.
they put some horns into it, some devilish.
Oh, they
Like
do that in Portugal?
Yeah, they do that in Portugal.
What festival is that for?
There are in a few places in the northern part in Trás-os-Montes. There are
Okay.
some villages that still have them by the carnival.
Wow.
Around that epoch. So
I love it.
if you go into the internet, you can find for Caretos and Caretos Lanzarin. Lanzarin, it's not a village, and in that place they put some vests with hay, so they are all brownish with some big wood masks with horns. They are
Wow.
much more like apish type thing,
Yeah.
hominid than the other ones in Pudens, because they use those vests, but they are very colorful, like green, yellow, red. You generally don't see or don't see the similarities with the hairy hominid with that kind of
Does it happen normally in the spring, or
yeah,
it's like, so it's like a harvest, a spring fertility
yeah, and it's
type of
still
time? Yeah.
those fests are still in February during the
Oh,
carnival
that's
every year,
amazing. And
in
I
Spain
love
the
that.
same. In Spain
Yeah.
the same.
Bucket list. That's going to have to be the next on the list, as well as a visit to the caves at Istritz and Iruin and Navarre, as well as the Basque. I've been to the Basque country in the past. I both the Spanish and French Basque, and I just love the Basque people. You know, they've got a special place for me. It's just a wonderful place. Just
Yeah, very nice
before
people.
we wrap up, Rui, just let everybody know where they can find you, how they can support you, and what your plans for the future are.
Yeah, the people can find me in Sasquatch Southwest Europe in the YouTube. I have been uploading my videos. They are not up to date because my experience are from a year ago, so I'm putting the things that I have collected in the past, and they can support me by seeing my journey. It's my journey. That's what I like to call it, because it is a journey, and it's still happening from day to day. It's some weird things that are still happening.
The weird things are the best things. Rui, thanks so much. I admonish, recommend everybody to get out there and watch the videos. I watch them regularly, and I really like them and feel connected and excited that there's a European phenomena happening, and most of all, that somebody is looking into it, because it's so rare on our European side that there are people like you have in North America doing this. So, thank you for doing that, Rui. You've been amazing. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope a lot more people are going to the field and sharing their experiences around Europe and UK. Then we have to get some answers from it.
We need them. We need them. And let's hope it's us that finds them. Rui,
Yeah.
thank you. Bye bye.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Bye bye, Andy.